Phil comes up to me and he says, well, before we go, I want to play something for you. And all of a sudden, it was In the Air Tonight. It was a demo of In the Air Tonight. And I'm sitting there listening to this, and I'm thinking, wow, this sounds like a song that could be with Genesis. It could be a Genesis song easily.
Greetings, everyone. This is Eric Henry Andersen, and welcome to another episode of Conversations for Convergence, a curious podcast exploring myriad topics including music and the arts, athletics, high performance, and creativity in all sorts of forms. Today's guest is Daryl Stuermer. Daryl's had quite an impressive career, which began in Milwaukee in the mid-'70s when pianist George Duke of Frank Zappa's band recommended him for an audition with jazz-violin legend Jean-Luc Ponty. That opportunity led to a European tour and 4 influential albums, quickly establishing Daryl as a world-class guitarist. In 1977, Daryl landed an audition to replace Steve Hackett as Genesis's touring lead guitarist, beginning a remarkable 30-year run performing with the band on every world tour, culminating in the final Genesis show at the O2 Arena in London in March of 2022. When Phil Collins launched his solo career in 1980, Daryl became a foundational part of that band, and he's actually the only member who's been with Phil since the very beginning. His signature guitar work defined the sound of many Phil's classics like In the Air Tonight and Easy Lover, and he even co-wrote the Grammy-nominated hit Something Happened on the Way to Heaven. In addition to Genesis and Phil Collins, his session credits include Jean-Luc Ponty, Abba's Frida, Philip Bailey, George Duke, Eric Henry Andersen, that's right, and many others. He's performed on literally some of the biggest stages in history, including a Genesis show for 500,000 people in Rome in 2007. He's played the Super Bowl, the Academy Awards, the Grammys, and every chapter of The Tonight Show, from the Johnny Carson era to Leno, and most recently Jimmy Fallon. He's also released a handful of jazz rock fusion solo albums through his own label, Urban Island Music. So the episode today was particularly special for me, having known Daryl for over 15 years and having the incredible privilege of performing with him, both in his band and with him playing guitar in mine, as well as on a variety of recording projects. We covered a lot of ground in this episode: how Daryl first got into music, his early years teaching guitar lessons and performing 5 nights a week on the Milwaukee club scene, landing his first major gigs with Jean-Luc Ponty, Gino Vannelli, and ultimately Genesis, being one of the first people on the planet to hear the demo of In the Air Tonight, stories from Phil Collins and Genesis tours, working and recording with Phil Collins, and lots of other gems. I had an awesome time talking with Daryl today, and I'm quite sure you guys are going to enjoy this conversation as well. Daryl Stuermer, thanks so much for coming on Conversations for Convergence. It's been a few months since I've seen you, but it's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. You too. No, I'm happy to do it.
Thanks so much. So, obviously, you and I at this point go back, quite a few years. I guess, let's see, 2000. I think I met you in 2009, but 2010 is the first time we played together. So, it's that's been a long time already.
Right. Well, I actually met you, I think, when you were 4.
Oh, okay.
You remember that, right?
Yeah.
You remember the story. Yeah.
Right. Was that Kostia's wedding or something?
Yeah, it was like his wedding at the house, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course, because there was the Russian wedding and then there was a wedding at the house. Yeah.
Right. You were just running around. You were just a kid. I didn't know who you were. You were just one of the children there.
Yeah. Right. Who would have thought that? What the heck is that? 35 years later, we'd be here doing this. That is absolutely nuts. Or 34 years. I don't need to make myself any older than I actually am.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure of your age either. So
yeah. Well, again, obviously, I know a lot of this, but just for the listeners, maybe you could just give everybody a little bit of your background, kind of where things started for you, maybe some early memories of some of your first memories in music. What drew you to the guitar? Did you think that was in your future, or did it sort of just happen? What's the Daryl Stuermer kind of beginning look like?
Well, kind of shortly, in the beginning, when I was in 3rd grade, I went out for beginner's band. I thought maybe I'd play drums because my father kind of taught me some things on the drums. He played, I had a snare drum, and he had played drums in the Navy. Not like full time or anything like that, but that's when playing drums. And so I kind of got interested in drums. So when in 3rd grade, when they said you could join beginner's band, I went in there. I said, I'd like to play drums. And I remember the band director said, we don't have any sticks here right now. It was one of those things, I know what happened, is that every boy wants to play drums,
Hmm.
but I actually could. But he didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
And I had learned all these paradiddles and all these things. And he says, let's maybe try something else. So we tried me on French horn, tried me on clarinet and trumpet. All of a sudden, trumpet came about. So long story short, I ended up being playing cornet in the beginners band,
Hmm.
and then senior band, and then finally in high school. And so that's how everything began. But when I was 11 years old, I picked up the guitar because my brother Dwayne is 2.5 years older than me. So you
Hmm.
always look up to like he's my brother and
Hmm.
he's cool. He played guitar already.
Hmm.
By the way, in band, he played trombone, I played trumpet. So it was bass clef, treble clef.
Nice.
Now he's a bass player, but
Hmm.
back then he played guitar. And so I started learning guitar, but I kind of passed him up on the guitar. The difference is he could strum the guitar, play chords and things, but he wasn't like a lead player, but he was a singer.
Mm.
So he was cool. He was Elvis Presley.
Hmm.
You know, and so he started playing in bands before I did because I was just learning how to play guitar.
Hmm.
But I kind of passed him up on the guitar.
Hmm.
And when he when he was teaching guitar, when he turned 18, he ended up going into the military.
Hmm.
Because at that time, you wouldn't know this, but at that time there was a draft.
Yeah,
So there
this
was
is Vietnam era, right?
Vietnam era, right? So around 69, he went into the military. He went into the army. So I ended up taking over his students when he had students at a music store. And he said, my brother is a better guitar player than me, so he could have my students. I was 16. So I ended up teaching guitar. That's actually the only other job I ever had was teaching guitar. And so I started playing, and I had my first gig when I was 12 years old. I had a little band, got together. It's that same story, like say, hey, you play guitar, you play bass, and then everybody buys an instrument.
Yeah, sure.
Right. So, but lucky enough, I was a little ahead on this because my brother had played. I had already played music. I could read trumpet, but I couldn't read guitar yet.
Hmm.
So I ended up playing guitar, had some bands, and then when he got out of Vietnam, out of the army, then we started playing in bands together. We started forming bands,
Sure.
and that's how everything kind of began. That was the very, very beginning.
Yeah. And so back in those days, did you have any sort of idea at all, or did you have any dream, like were your eyes set on, oh, someday I really want to be playing big stages and be doing this for a living, and or is that something that just kind of happened by accident?
Well, what I wanted to do is I wanted to be a guitar player in a band.
Hmm.
I didn't know how big it was going to get. I never even thought that I'm going to be in a band that plays on big stages. I thought what might happen. Like, let's say I'm 15 years old at this point, and I'm very serious about music.
Hmm.
I'm enjoying it. I had a Fender Stratocaster, and which I wish I had that one now because I could
Hmm.
probably you could probably sell it for $50,000, and I think I sold it for $150.
Okay.
And it was a 1958 or 59 Stratocaster. When I turned 15 years old, I started thinking like, I'd like to do this for a living. So I'm probably going to have another job
Hmm.
and then play in nightclubs on the weekends.
Hmm.
That's really what I thought was going to happen.
Hmm.
And I don't know what I was going to get a job in. I can't do much else, but I was good at drafting in architectural drawing and drafting. I
Cool.
was good at that kind of thing. So I thought maybe I'll have that as my job,
Yeah.
and then I can play on weekends. And that's
Yeah.
that's kind of like the way a lot of doctors and lawyers, people that kind of started playing guitar, got into that kind of thing. And they did have a band that they maybe rehearse with or play on the
Hmm.
weekends. That's what
Nice.
I thought I was going to be ending up. I was going to
Yeah.
end up.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, needless to say, that path didn't exactly it turn out. You weren't an architect playing as a
Right.
weekend warrior. So
Yeah.
so how did it really take shape? I mean, I know Gino Vannelli and Jean-Luc Ponty were some of your first fairly large gigs, but I mean, you were playing with Dwayne, right, in Milwaukee
Yeah.
clubs. Like, Just talk a little bit about that progression from like playing as a club musician and a guitar teacher to, I guess, landing the gig with Genesis.
Right. Well, we formed a band called we and my brother named the band Sweet Bottom.
Mm.
And when we first started, we weren't getting a lot of gigs. You'd play somewhere for one night and then you have to try to find another gig. Well, what eventually happened is we ended up having a band that got a gig at a place called Sardino's Bull Ring, and we played 5 nights a week. And
That's where you get
yeah,
your chops, huh?
yeah, it really is. 5 nights a week, played from Wednesday through Sunday, and then had Monday and Tuesday off. And what happened was we got pretty popular. This was the place to go. It probably fit 90 people capacity, but you'd have more than that on a Friday and a Saturday. And
Is this like the early 70s or something?
yeah, it would have been 1974, 75.
Okay.
Actually, prior to that, though, I was in another band. I should say that too, that I was in a band. It was a horn group. I think it had about 5 horn players. Uh, it was a very popular band. But my brother and I ended up wanting to do something else. I mean, that band we had was called Family at Max. It was a really good band.
Mhm.
But it was more into the R&B commercial stuff, and we thought we wanted to do something a little more progressive.
Sure.
And so we formed this band called Sweet Bottom. And when we finally got the gig at this nightclub called Sardino's Bull Ring, we got very popular. What would happen is a lot of times bands would come into town and ask the promoter, where could we go and see another band or go and see a band and sit in?
Mm-hmm.
And they'd always, most of the promoters in town knew about us, and we would allow people to sit in with us. So we'd have, some pretty well-known, at least more in the jazz world, some pop, come in and sit in with us. Well, one time we actually had Frank Zappa, members of the Frank Zappa band come in. And that's what changed everything in my life, because there was a keyboard player named George Duke, who actually became quite a known producer, but at this time he was in the Frank Zappa Mothers of Invention band. And so all these people sat in. There was 2 drummers. One was Chester Thompson, and the other one was Ralph Humphreys. There was a bass player named Tom Fowler. And Tom Fowler I ended up playing with in Jean-Luc Ponty's band later. And Chester, obviously, I ended up playing in Genesis. So this all kind of just happened. So we were playing songs, and what happened was I played about 2 songs, and I noticed some other people would switch off, like, okay, you play bass now. And my brother would give Tom Fowler the bass, and he'd come up. So I played 2 songs, and I put my guitar down, and George Duke said to me, "Where are you going, kid?" And I thought maybe someone else would know. No, you stay up here.
That's awesome.
Okay. Right. And I think at this point I would have been 21.
So George Duke he's calling you a kid. Is he 30? Is he 35?
Yeah, he's an older guy. He's like 33.
Hey, careful there, Daryl.
But it's really funny. I don't know how old he was, but he was probably at least 30.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so I went, oh my God, okay. Because I was a fan of this guy already. He had played, I had an album way back called The George Duke Trio with special guest Jean-Luc Ponty, something like that, live at the Experience. And the Experience was a nightclub in California, in LA. And I had this album. So when here's George Duke sitting next to me, basically, and he sounded great right away. And apparently he liked my playing. So what happened after that is maybe some months later, I don't know if it was months, probably, our band wanted to take a week off because we were playing in this nightclub 5 nights a week. We had already been there at least a year or 2.
Is this like a 3-hour gig, a 4-hour gig?
Yeah. It usually started at 9:30 and went to 1:30. And then on Saturdays, it went from 10 till 2. So there was like 5 sets on Saturday night. Yeah, it was and at that time you have to remember that there was smoking was allowed. So you're in this smoking every night. I'd come back to my apartment, I smelled like an ashtray.
Yeah,
You
I'm sure the singers loved that.
know? Yeah.
But I guess that's just how it was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's how it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And it had bad ventilation, all
Yeah,
that
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. But we had great crowds. What was really great about that experience was on sort of like Wednesdays and Thursday, we were kind of free to, we had smaller crowds, but on
Mhm.
Fridays and Saturday, we had the people who dressed up and actually went out on dates.
Mhm.
And what was cool about it, it was actually a very mixed crowd, a white and black crowd.
Mhm.
It was
Mhm.
about 50-50.
Mhm.
It was really a lot of fun. And so our band decided to take a break and have a week off, and we wanted to go out to California with this tape that we made of our, thinking that we're going to get a record deal.
Mhm.
What I think about that tape now, I know we couldn't get a record deal because it wasn't very commercial, you
Yeah.
know. So we went out to LA, and the singer that we had been using, a female singer named Sylvia St. James, she was a really great singer too.
Mhm.
She was kind of going out to LA and back. She was kind of almost living in both places. So she was out there, and we knew that she knew George Duke. She had sang on a George Duke record.
Mhm.
And when we got out there, we called her, and she said, "Oh, I'm going to tell George that you guys are out here."
Mhm.
All of a sudden, she had talked to George Duke, and George Duke said to her, apparently, "Is that guitar player out
Mhm.
here?" And she said, "Yes." So she gave us a call and said, "George Duke is going to be calling." I'm at a hotel, right?
Mhm.
And George Duke calls and says, "I was thinking of recommending you to Jean-Luc Ponty. He's looking for a guitar player." I'm also a big fan of Jean-Luc Ponty at this point.
Mhm.
He was in the he was in the Mothers of Invention with Frank Zappa. He was in the Mahavishnu Orchestra with John
Mhm.
McLaughlin Band. And I had his solo records that he did. He's a French violinist. I had
Mhm.
his solo records. So that freaked me out. And so I ended up Jean-Luc Ponty calls, and I can't believe I'm talking to this guy. Now just
So
remember
you're
again,
quite nervous talking to
yeah,
him. Like this is one of your heroes. Is it fair to say, or at least
absolutely.
somebody look? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this guy was fantastic.
Yeah.
Uh, I was a big fan of him. And
Yeah.
the other thing was, so when we had a rented car, so our sax player Warren Wheatgrass and Mike Murphy, our drummer, were dropping me off at Jean-Luc Ponty's house. He lived this is in Los Angeles.
Mhm.
He lived on Little Laurel Canyon Drive. There's Laurel Canyon, then this little street goes off of it called Little, and we stop in front of his house. And when we pull up, all of a sudden I see him walk out, and I think to myself, there's fucking Jean-Luc Ponty. Oh my God. And I remember getting my guitar out of the trunk, and while I'm walking towards him, my legs are ready to give out. I'm so freaked out
That's
by the
amazing.
time. Yeah, I'm so freaked out. And he's very nice,
Yeah.
and we go in his house, and sitting there at a piano is this piano player. Uh, Her name is Patrice Russian. I don't know if you know who that is, but
Mm-mm.
she's about 4'11" tall.
Okay.
She's black. She's 20 years old. I'm 21. And she's like Herbie Hancock on the piano. She ended up playing on Jean-Luc Ponty's first record on Atlantic Records. That's the
Okay.
only record I had heard.
Mhm.
And because this is why he was going to why he was looking for a guitar player. He wanted
Mhm.
to go on tour, promote that record. And anyway, we sit down, and there's music stand. It's just the three of us, acoustic piano, just a regular acoustic piano,
Mhm.
violin, and me. And I'm sitting there, and I'm not the best reader. I can read music, but I'm not a great
Mhm.
sight reader.
Mhm.
So he puts the music down in front of me, and I'm looking at it, and what I do have is a good memory. I have a
Mhm.
good photographic memory. So
Mhm.
I'm just looking at this thing, and I'm running through it while he's talking. And I'm saying, I got to learn this song because this is. So we do the first song, and it worked out pretty well. And I did a song. And then we do a second song. He puts up the next song. It's called Poly Folk Dance. It's in 9/8.
Okay.
And I'm going, oh, great. It's in 9/8. And I'm kind of working this whole thing out.
Now, and,
But
and
I
are
did
these
it.
are these like lead lines or accompaniment lines? Are you playing rhythm stuff that's backing his leads or what?
A lot of things are worth I'm playing along with him.
Okay.
Yeah. this one song in nine is like a down 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 okay, and then all of a sudden then I have to start playing some things with him because
Yeah.
the piano player there was keeping the bass line going and then playing chords,
Mm-hmm.
and she's amazing, and anyway, so we ended up going through about two, three, four, about four or five songs. And then we're done. And Jean-Luc Ponty says to me, well, I think this is going to work out. I don't know when a tour is going to start, but I'd like to get you for the tour.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how everything kind of began for me. I ended up working with Jean-Luc Ponty for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So when I joined, I actually started touring with him. I probably was 22 then.
Okay.
I remember it was August in 1975.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when I saw Jean-Luc Ponty, and I'm sitting there thinking that this guy's got all this experience. He's 33 years old.
Yeah.
I'm 22.
Almost done with his career. My God, 33.
Yeah, this might be the last tour he ever does. But I mean, in my head, like this was a guy that I was listening to. Guys like George Duke, Jean-Luc Ponty, John McLaughlin, the guitarist. Those were kind of I was kind of in my fusion time at this point. I started, when I first started playing music, it was a rock. Then I got into jazz, and then I got more into the fusion of jazz and rock.
Mm-hmm.
And so these guys are heroic musicians for me.
Right. That's amazing. So during that time too, you certainly don't have to, you probably don't even remember the specifics on this, but I'm just curious, like somebody in the Jean-Luc Ponty band at that point, I mean, this isn't huge, but you're not playing in clubs. Are you making a middle-class living at that point? Are you still really struggling, but they're covering your expenses? Like, what did that look like at that point in life?
Yeah. When I first started with him, now I don't know how much this translates in today, but I was making $250 a week without per diem
Okay.
when you're on tour. But you're not making $250 a week when you're not working.
Right. Yeah.
I even remember that my first tour with him, I think we did Europe first and then we did the States.
Yeah.
But I remember that I made like $12,000 with Sweet Bottom, and I almost made that with Jean-Luc Ponty the first year.
Oh, wow.
So I was making almost the same amount of money with my local band, but because you're only getting paid when you're working, when you're on.
Yeah.
And I remember because when we went to Europe, my salary went up to $300.
And then eventually with Genesis, it went up to $350 a week, right?
Yeah. And that's the thing. So, but I mean, I was able to make a basic living. I'd like to see what that translates into today.
Probably $1,000 a month.
Yeah, probably. Or a week.
Or a week, I mean. Yeah, sorry, a week.
Yeah. Probably 1,000 to 1,200 a week.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I got a call to do Genesis because they're guitarists a lot. But prior to that, I was on tour with Jean-Luc Ponty. That was 75, 76, and 77.
Mm-hmm.
And in 1977, I remember this specifically. We were in Chicago O'Hare Field Airport, and I see Chester Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
And we all go over to me and this drummer. The drummer I was working with at this tour was a guy named Steve Smith.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve Smith's a great drummer to this day. Mm-hmm. He ended up after Jean-Luc Ponty, playing with Journey for years.
Nice.
And now he's like a very well-known kind of technical, great jazz drummer. But we went over and talked to Chester Thompson, and he was right at this time he was playing with The Wiz, which was the musical, like Wizard of Oz, The Wiz. And because prior to that he was with Frank Zappa, and then he was with Weather Report, and now he was doing this. And then I said, oh, so how long does this go on? He told me how long it goes on, but he says, I'm going to be playing with Genesis. I went, what?
So and Genesis had this is Peter Gabriel area. They were already pretty darn big at this point.
Well, the era that we're talking about now is he was going to be playing with Genesis with Phil as the vocalist.
Oh, really? Already? Okay.
Right. Because Phil had become the vocalist. They had a drummer named Bill Bruford. Mm-hmm. And then Chester Thompson was going to be their next drummer. Okay. So I thought, oh my God, Chester Thompson. I wonder how this band is.
Mhm.
I didn't know much about Genesis. I really didn't. And so all of a sudden, there was at one point where Jean-Luc Ponty gives me a cassette, and one side, both sides, one side has an album, a Genesis album, the other side has a Genesis album. And one's called A Trick of the Tail, which to this day I still think is their greatest album.
Mhm.
And then Wind and Wuthering on the other side, which is their second greatest album.
Mhm.
And when I heard that, I thought, this is a fantastic group. I mean, I really love this band. And I didn't yet know the era with Peter Gabriel. I didn't know those songs.
Mhm.
But anyway, so that's what I heard. So I heard Genesis, and it was incredible. So when I got the call to Steve Hackett was leaving the band.
Mhm.
So when I got the call to audition for Genesis, I thought, oh my God, this is another level. Not only it's a different level of music, and it's also a different economic,
Mhm.
financial level. So I remember they sent me a tape, and the cassette had 5 songs on it, and there was a couple working titles because they were putting out an album called "And Then There Were Three." This is 1978,
Mhm.
and there's a couple older songs, and then there's 2 new songs,
Mhm.
and one was called "Calypso," which ended up to be "Follow You, Follow Me."
Mhm. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then there was another song called 5/8 because it's in 5/8.
Mhm.
It's called Down and Out. And then there was these other songs from the older albums, Los Sendos and I'm trying to remember the names of the song. Squonk.
Mhm.
Yeah, not an easy song to sing.
No,
And
no, yeah, I remember singing that auditioning for you.
well,
I love that song.
yeah, and it's an incredibly hard song to sing. You know that when Genesis was looking for a singer after
Mhm.
they left, that's the song they were auditioning people on. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
And they auditioned all these guys in England. And there was one point where apparently Phil just said, just let me give it a shot because he was only singing backing vocals with
Yeah.
Genesis. When Peter was singing, he'd do some harmonies.
Yeah.
So he did the song, and these guys are looking at each other like, why are we looking for another singer?
Yeah.
You
That is
know, anyway,
such a bizarre and awesome
yeah,
total fork in the road moment because obviously at that point Phil had no idea that this was going to lead to a career that he was going to go on to become one of the most successful pop
yeah.
rock singers in history. But anyway,
No, it really, that's true.
yeah.
And I always think about that because in some ways I think he wished he could have just stayed as the drummer.
Mhm.
And they'd have another singer because he just loves, drummer first is his
Sure.
thing. I'm
Sure.
a drummer first, then I'm a singer.
Sure.
But I mean, we all know he's great at both.
Yep.
So anyway, so that's how that. So the way the story goes is, they said they're going to fly me to New York. I live in Milwaukee, and I lived in Milwaukee then.
Mhm.
You're going to fly me to New York. Wait, did I live in Milwaukee then? No, I'm sorry. I actually, at that point, I lived in California. I lived in Santa Monica,
Mhm.
and my wife and I lived in Santa Monica. So they said, we'll fly you to New York and for the audition. So I ended up going, and I showed up at rehearsal. It was 10 in the morning at
Mhm.
SIR, and it's Mike Rutherford. Now, I don't remember if they told me this. I didn't know if they told me it was just going to be one guy or it's going to be the band. So I walked in,
Mhm.
and it was just Mike Rutherford.
Mhm.
And what he did is he had monitors on the floor. He had 2 pedal boards, one for him, one for me. I had no pedal board at this time. I had basically a Morley wah-wah volume pedal.
Okay.
It's a volume pedal and wah-wah. That's all I ever used. I didn't
Mhm.
have anything interesting. And here's this on the floor, this pedal board. I think it was Steve Hackett's pedal board,
Mhm.
which had some great effects that I knew nothing about. And the delay was an Echoplex, which is a tape
Okay.
delay. I don't know
Mhm.
if you. And so we sit down and I mean, we talk first, and we're getting along pretty well. And he's a very personable guy,
Mhm.
and we start playing, and we played probably about not even the whole song. We probably played about half the song, if not a little bit more. And he stopped the cassette. He says, "Let's go on to the next one." And he fast forwards, the cassette, and we go to the next song. We play that. We went through 4 songs, and he said to me, I'll never forget. He says, "Well, I think you're the one." And I thought, I am, because when he was stopping the
Yeah.
tape, I was
Yeah.
thinking maybe it's not happening.
Yeah, that's what I would have been thinking too. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So anyway, that's how it all began. And
Yeah.
he says, I'll ring you at the hotel. They put me up at the plaza, and he says, I'll ring you at the hotel, and we'll go through a song list of what you got to learn for the tour, which was coming up in February. This was December,
Nice. Yep.
February. And by the way, because nothing is written out in music, you have to
Yeah.
learn everything by
Sure.
ear. So, but I said, he said, I'll have to ring you later. I have four other guitar players I'm auditioning today. And I
Hmm.
thought, okay, now what could happen from this time to the hotel?
Hmm.
I'm not going to get the gig because maybe
Yeah,
he finds another guy.
totally.
But, so 5 o'clock comes around and I don't get a call. Then 6 o'clock is coming and I'm going, yeah, maybe it's not going to happen.
Hmm.
And then all of a sudden about 6:15 or 6:20, he calls and he says, why don't you come to my room and we'll go through some songs. And I went to his room and he had a list of 26 songs. And some of them are long songs, they're
Hmm.
Genesis,
Probably
orchestrated.
complicated too. It's,
Oh
you're
yeah.
not just
Oh
strumming a
yeah.
C chord and an F.
Yeah, that's right. And actually a lot of little did I know that some of these out of the 26 songs, we're not going to do 26 songs on the tour. We might do segments of songs and put them in medley form.
Sure.
But there are a lot of complicated things. And so I remember all of a sudden I remember just like sitting down with I had the live album called Seconds Out, which was really a great live album, learning all this stuff. And I didn't know sometimes what I was hearing was that synthesizer or was that guitar, because Steve had all these sounds that I
Yeah.
had never done.
Yeah.
The way he approached it, it could sound like a synthesizer. So, but I would just learn both parts because I didn't
Yeah.
know what I was going to have to learn.
Sure.
So anyway,
Yeah.
that was sort of the beginning. That was the audition. But I did say to Mike, I said, I recognize two of the names that he mentioned that we're going to audition. I recognize these names, and I said, what was it about me
Hmm.
that you didn't pick these guys? He said, all the other guys that came didn't come prepared. And I said, what do you mean? He said, like one guy came in, and this is a guy that's actually fairly well known name, not big time, but at
Hmm.
least among musicians, I know who he is. I'm
Hmm.
not going to say who it is.
Yeah.
And he said, so what key is this in? Like here's this. Like I mean, I shed on these songs. It was
Yeah.
only four songs. It's not a
Yeah.
big 4 or 5 songs.
Yeah.
Not a big deal to learn 4 or 5
Yeah.
songs. But
Especially
even there's
for a serious audition. Like, what the
right.
hell would somebody be thinking?
Right. And the thing was, there was a couple complicated songs there. So you
Yeah.
would have to sit down and learn this stuff. There's one called Los Angeles, which
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
kind of a big
Yeah.
arrangement. So anyway, he said they didn't come prepared. And he said, another guy said, what style of music is this? And I mean, I think of Genesis as its own style anyways.
Yeah.
It's Genesis, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's more in that progressive rock vein,
Yeah.
if you want to
Yeah.
say. So I was really surprised
That's just wild.
because, in my opinion, the other two guys that were there could have done it too.
Yeah.
But if
Well,
if if you're coming in unprepared, I mean, when you had a chance to have a cassette and the music, well, you come and do it.
absolutely. And actually, I would say, one of the things that I remember from you early on is exactly just Costi had actually told me that story, so I was planning on asking to basically have you verify if that was actually what happened. But I remember the first time you performed with me, and I was 23 years old, and I'm certainly a total nobody, and you learned all of my songs like in a week, and you had little cheat sheets, but you knew exactly what you're doing better than anybody who had ever played them before. And that really struck me at the time, not only as just an incredibly awesome thing for somebody to do as a nice gesture, but like it was also a mark of your professionalism. You're like, you didn't care who you were playing with. I mean, as long as they were good, but your job as a guitarist and as somebody who it's kind of a mark of your character is what I'm saying is like you know your shit and you come prepared. And I remember experiencing that myself and going, holy shit, Daryl knows how to play my songs, like
Wow.
exactly how they go.
Well, I mean, I kind of look at it like, I mean, if I take the gig, I got to do it right, right?
Like either
And
don't
also,
take it, don't take
yeah,
it, don't go halfway. Either take the gig or don't, right?
yeah, and also, it would be embarrassing, you know, And
Yeah.
that's the way I feel too. I don't want to
Yeah.
embarrass myself and come
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
prepared.
Yeah.
I mean, I did the same thing with uh I did a tour, we did the first tour with Genesis
Hmm.
in 1978. And then I remember coming back off the tour. I stopped in LA. I stopped in LA to go to my apartment because I was going to be getting married in Milwaukee. So I stopped in LA and I was going to be there for about 3 days
Hmm.
and then go to Milwaukee to get married. While I was there for the 3 days, I talked to this drummer that I worked with in Jean-Luc Ponty. His name was Mark Cranny. He was the
Hmm.
second drummer. We had three drummers, and Mark Cranny was the second, and Steve Smith was the third. And Mark's an incredible drummer.
Hmm.
And I called Mark just to say hello. Maybe we'll have breakfast or dinner, and then I got to go to Milwaukee in a few days.
Hmm.
And he said, "So how was the tour?" And I tell him how great the tour was with Genesis. He says, "Are they touring this year?" And I said, "No, we're actually taking off 1979. This will be we'll be taking off because Mike's wife and Tony's wife they're pregnant. They're going to have a
Hmm.
baby. So what? So then Mark Cranny says to me, he says, "So you're open, you're free?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, I'm working with Gino Vannelli right now, and he's looking for a guitar player."
Mm.
It's one of those things again, it just
Yeah.
kind of happens.
Yeah.
Probably more back then than it does today.
Yeah.
And he said, "Would you want to do that?" I said, "Yeah." I was a fan of Gino Vannelli,
Hmm.
and so now like then all of a sudden he calls Gino Vannelli, then Gino Vannelli calls me,
Hmm.
and he said, "Could you come on Thursday or whatever it is?" And
Hmm.
I said, "Sure." So I went out right away and bought the Brother to Brother album. That was the album that the tour was going to be. I
Hmm.
didn't play on that album,
Sure.
and I learned the songs.
Yeah.
I didn't know what songs we were going to play, but
Hmm.
I learned as many songs on that record as I could. And when I went to the audition, there was three other guitar players at the audition.
Yeah.
I felt like this is like auditioning for a movie,
Yeah. Right.
you
Yeah.
know. And I just remember that. And we'd all stand there with our guitars, and then he'd say, "We're going to do a song called Appaloosa." I don't know if
Hmm.
you know this,
Hmm.
and it's got a good rhythm part, and then you solo. So he
Hmm.
says, "When I point at you, you play the solo. When I point at you with the two fingers, you play the rhythm." So we went through this whole thing. And after we all did the playing, I thought there was one other guy that was pretty good. The manager came up to me and said, "Come back here. I need to talk to you." And he said, Gino likes your playing. He'd like to get you for the album." That's how that happened.
Sure.
Again, that was a little bit of preparation too. I had to prepare
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could have gone in cold,
Yeah.
but I did. I went out right away and bought that album
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I knew that's probably going to be the songs. I did have a couple of Gino Vannelli albums prior to that, but this
Hmm.
was the first album where he actually used a guitar player throughout and a bass player throughout. Before it was
Right.
all synthesizer players.
Yeah.
I think he had like four synthesizer players at one time.
Yeah.
When we went on tour, we had three. But anyway,
That's cool. So,
yeah,
in preparation for this, I put out to my Patreon fans, basically requests if they had anything they wanted me to ask you, and I did get a few responses. And one of the patrons, Ken, and I'm going to ask this now because it seems to go kind of right
sure.
in tune with where we're at. He was asking about Steve Hackett, and like, just a couple questions, like, is this are you friends with Steve Hackett? Do you ever have any relationship with him back then or now? And also, sort of as you got into Genesis, was it one of these things where Mike and Tony and Phil were saying, "Hey, we want you to do exactly the Steve Hackett thing," or was there a little bit of breathing room? Or I guess maybe you could just talk a little bit about that transition and maybe
Sure.
anything you might know about Steve.
Well, first of all, I had to learn a lot of Steve Hackett stuff, and I did try to learn it as close to what he played as possible. But I
Hmm.
also thought, I don't know if they're going to want me to go. When I talked with Mike about that, he says, "No, you play the signature parts and the
Hmm.
parts that you already know what parts have to be there.
Sure.
But if you want to stretch over here a little bit, go ahead." And
Hmm.
as the years went along, I would stretch out some things a little bit more than I used to. But talking about Steve I mean, we're like not friends or anything like
Hmm.
this, but every time I've come across him. We've gotten along just great.
Hmm.
Remember even talking to him at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I like some of his stuff on his records, and I told
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
You know, and what's funny to me is when you see things on YouTube, they'll show me doing this solo on a song called Firth of Fifth. He's known for that. I'm known for that. And you'll get all this like arguing back and forth, like, oh, Stuermer, he can't shine his shoes, blah, blah.
Armchair experts.
Right. And all this kind of stuff, and I'm just doing it the way I do it. And
Yeah.
Steve obviously was the creator of it and does it his way.
Yeah.
And I do some other things that he doesn't do because he's not going to do what I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just funny because they're going back and forth. You get people that say, "Oh, I like them both." Somebody says, "I like Steve better. I like Daryl." Blah, blah. And the thing is, I always look at people like they seem like they're angry. And I'm thinking to myself, you know what? First of all, don't be angry at me. I just took the gig. You could be angry at Mike, Tony, and Phil, or Mike for saying, that I'm having Daryl. But there's no animosity between me and Steve at all.
Yeah.
Like, are we big buddies? No, but because I didn't grow up with him, and but anytime
Sure.
I see him, it's great. He's such a fine player, and
Hmm.
you know, I mean, uh, I don't even know how the whole thing went down, but I know that it was during the Wind and Wuthering album where I don't know if he left. I'm sure he left the band, and that I do know.
Hmm.
And maybe there was tension then, but I don't think there's any of that tension
Yeah.
anymore between those guys. There's
Yeah.
definitely nothing with me.
Yeah.
I mean, I admire him, I respect him,
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think for any of us who have just been in bands or creative projects or frankly just been on this planet for at least a few decades, organizations, groups, creative projects, they're difficult. And sometimes, I know I've certainly been in my fair share where it gets to the point where it's no longer serving everybody. And sometimes that's ugly in the moment. Sometimes it's not. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, it need not be, right? I mean, Steve went on to
Right.
have a great solo career. Obviously, you had a great career with Genesis and then Phil Collins, and it was
Yeah.
exactly as it should have been.
Well, I look at Peter Gabriel leaving Genesis,
Hmm.
and I think how much better both people did.
Right.
Peter has a great career.
Yeah. What an
Genesis,
awesome artist too, Peter
yeah,
Gabriel. Man.
I'm a big fan,
Yeah.
and those guys don't seem to have any animosity towards him. Everybody did well,
Hmm.
and then Phil did so well on his solo career. I mean, it's pretty amazing. The nice thing for me was, okay, I was never a member of Genesis, but I did all the tours.
Hmm.
But at least with Phil, I got to also play on all the albums as
Hmm.
well, go on the tours. And they never conflicted because Genesis would go on tour, then you have a
Sure.
year off. Then Phil would go on tour, have a year off.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
nice. And then in that year, I would do things on my own,
Sure.
gigs.
Yeah.
And as you know, because you sang on a lot of the gigs,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I had basically three singers,
Yeah.
because everybody lives in a different
Sure.
state, and
Yeah.
when I was using the singer Woody, he lived in Green Bay at the time.
Hmm.
So nice, easy. Okay,
Totally.
great. Now he lives out in California,
Yeah.
and by the
Exactly.
way, I just had breakfast with him. I was just in California,
Oh,
and
really?
yeah,
Awesome.
and
Oh, right, with Leland Sklar, right? I saw a Facebook post.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah, I was just out there for 8 days, and
Nice.
I was just kind of catching up with people, and I thought, God, I haven't talked to Woody in years.
Hmm.
And it was just nice to see him, and he's doing okay out there. I'm
Great.
really happy for him.
Great. Fantastic. So we talked a little bit about Genesis, and then let's get into Phil Collins stuff. Like, how
Okay.
did that? We can imagine. Obviously, you're playing in Genesis. You've established a friendship and a working relationship with Phil, so it seems obvious that this could happen. But specifically, how did it happen? And also, how did Phil Collins even come to be a thing as a solo artist? I mean, because like you said before, he's thinking of himself primarily as a drummer.
Mhm.
Even in Genesis, you guys were auditioning different singers. Or they were auditioning different singers before you were in the band and chose Phil. Like, how
Mm.
does Phil Collins become an entity and then ultimately like a mega superstar? That's a big question, but how did it start is my question.
Well, I'll never forget because I think it was 1980. It was either 80 or 81. We were rehearsing at a place called Shepperton Studios in Surrey, England,
Hmm.
and I would always get a ride back to my hotel in London with either a crew member or whatever. And
You didn't take an
Phil,
Uber.
no, was there such thing back then? And or a taxi, but no, they would just drive you back, and Phil comes up to me and he says, um, how are you getting back into town? I said, well, Jeff's going to take me. He was the guitar tech. And he said, um, well, before we go, I want to play something for you. And so I went in his car and he had a cassette.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden it was In the Air Tonight. It was a demo of In the Air Tonight.
Amazing.
Or that thing. And then, but no guitar,
Hmm.
just chords playing through. And I'm listening to this, and you have to remember that at this time, he wasn't a songwriter himself. He might be a co-writer. Like I
Hmm.
know him and Steve wrote a song called Blood on the Rooftops, which is a great song.
Hmm.
But Phil never wrote anything on his own. Mike
Hmm.
and Tony were sort of the
Hmm.
main writers at this time. And so they were the Lennon and McCartney of the band, kind of.
Hmm.
And then sometimes someone else would contribute and blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
But, and I'm sitting there listening to this, and I'm thinking, wow, I didn't know Phil could write anything, I mean, on his own.
Sure.
And I thought at the time, this sounds like a song that could be with Genesis. It could be a
Hmm.
Genesis song easily. And then finished that song. Then he plays another song. He had two songs on there. The other
Hmm.
one is called I Missed Again,
Hmm.
which is on his first Face Value album, which totally different concept. It
Sure.
was more like a Motown kind of song,
Which is kind of what ended up happening with Phil, right? He had these
yeah,
sort of epic, ballads, and then he also had these Motown-ish sort of,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God. And he says, well, I'm thinking about doing a solo album and I'd like you to play. And I went, okay.
Nice.
And then what happened is was the Face Value album,
Right.
how that all kind of came about. I
Yeah.
mean, no one knew. I mean, who knew that he was going to be this? Obviously, even after this, that song In the Air Tonight is a classic as it is. It
Mm.
never hit number one.
Really?
No.
Wow, I can't believe that because even among the generation younger than me, they all
Yeah.
know that song.
Yeah, it's a very well-known
Yeah.
song, but it
Yeah.
was never a number one hit.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean it just grew and grew and grew as
Yeah.
time went on, and
Yeah.
it's more popular now than it's ever been.
Yeah.
I mean, when you hear other artists are even doing it, or
Yeah.
they're putting it in a loop, or there's even a country artist I just saw recently
Yeah.
singing that. I know.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just one of those fluke things, and again, all of a sudden he became a star. I mean, when
Yeah.
it started. The first tour, we were doing kind of theaters, small theaters, but when we did the No Jacket Required
Hmm.
uh, album and then tour, my God, all of a sudden it won like five. I think it's 5 Grammys that year.
Yeah.
That's when Grammys were real.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh,
People were
totally.
actually voting, and it wasn't
Yeah.
all about what's the most popular record.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Exactly.
actually won, and
Yeah.
the first I remember being at the Grammys, and the first award was Best Male Vocal, and
Yeah.
he won it.
Yeah.
And he went up there and he just thanked a whole mess of people, including Leland and me, and we were
Yeah.
sitting there like, "Wow, this is great." Then he kept winning, and I
Yeah.
remember he would walk up there going, "I thanked so many people the first time, I can't. Who else could I thank?" He didn't know he was going to win. He
Sure.
thought that
Yeah.
would. He
That's
thought that was going
amazing.
to be it, and I,
Yeah.
and I think it was for the song "One More Night."
Yep.
One More Night won
Mhm.
a Grammy. The album won a Grammy. Producing, whatever. It won
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
Anyway, fun.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that you were probably one of the first people who heard the demo of In the Air Tonight?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I mean, as far as any musician, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
That's
I bet
pretty
he played
cool.
it for the management, and
Yeah.
I never thought about it until you just said that. I thought
Yeah.
I probably am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe his
So
wife heard
sure.
it.
Sure. So getting to the Phil Collins stuff, am I correct? Was Tony Smith managing Genesis at that
Yes,
point? So when Phil wanted to go solo, I imagine Tony managed him right from the beginning
yes,
and
yeah,
continued to manage both projects through the
yeah,
last couple tours.
yeah. I mean, for the last 40 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, ever since I've been in there from '78, he's been the manager. He was the manager prior to that too.
Hmm.
So I think he started managing the band after The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway was the
Hmm.
album, and I think Selling England by the Pound.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's been there longer than me.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I had Brad on the podcast, um, I asked him what it was like to work with Phil, and I know you listened to that podcast, and you said you learned some things about Brad. That's cool.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's
he'll learn
fun.
some things about you from this. I certainly am. But What was Phil like to work with? And I guess I mean that as a, personally speaking, how was he? Was he a perfectionist? Was he sort of more of an easygoing guy? And then as it came to live performance and also studio stuff, like I guess more in the studio, how much of it was Daryl coming in and doing your thing? Or was it Phil saying, "Hey, I want to hear this"? Was it an outside producer? Was it collaborative? Anyway, that was too many questions at once, but
Well,
go
I,
for
I,
it as you will.
what usually happens when he was going to be doing an album, he would have demos.
Hmm.
And I always say this, I said, thank God he can't play guitar,
Hmm.
because if he could play guitar, I probably wouldn't be on the album,
Sure.
you know. But he's not a guitar player, but he can play keyboards and obviously drums, and you could put bass on it. So he'd have these demos, but I'll never forget this, because for the No Jacket Required album, had me he flew me over to England and to stay at his house, and he had a room in his house, sort of like what I have here,
Hmm.
and what you have there.
Hmm.
And he said I'd like to have some guitar in the demos. So we would start working on the demos. He'd have some idea. Like, I put it this way, I'd say it's kind of half and half.
Hmm.
Half of it's exactly, I just know him well enough, or I knew him well enough that I know what he needed, I know what he wants, but he wants you to imitate some of the stuff that he did.
Hmm.
But if you want to come a little bit out of it, you can, but he'll
Sure.
tell you if it's not working.
Yeah,
So
totally. Yeah.
you try different things,
Hmm.
and he'll go, oh, okay, you can do that, but also when this part comes, do this.
Yeah.
So he's immediately producing and composing at that
Hmm.
point. And I don't find him, I don't say that he's a perfectionist, but
Hmm.
but he does have an idea of what he needs and what he wants. A perfectionist to me kind of makes you think it's going to be ultra clean
Yeah.
and precise. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that way.
Hmm.
Um, he's into being a little bit looser. So
Hmm.
he's not loose, but he's also not a perfectionist, even though a
Sure.
lot of people think he is.
Yeah.
I think of that word in a different way, but
Yeah.
he's open. He's kind of like, okay, if you come something that's interesting, he'll let you do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But he'll also tell you if it's not working.
Sure.
And I don't find him hard to work with at all. I
Yeah.
find him very easy to work with, and I don't think I would have been there this many years if I did.
Yeah.
Um, because it's funny to say, but I'm the only person that's been there from day one,
Right.
that's
For Phil
done
Collins.
all the tours.
The only musician.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm the only musician that has been there since day one.
Because Ricky
Uh,
Lawson did some drumming when Chester was
yeah,
just not available for a tour. What happened those few years? Or
yeah. Honestly, I wish I knew. I don't know exactly. It was the same thing with Leland Sklar. Didn't do all the tours.
Nathan
He
East
did.
did some, right?
Nathan East did some, and then Leland came back, and
Yeah.
Brad Cole came. He was the second keyboard player we had. We
Right.
had a guy named Peter Robinson,
Right.
and then he started doing film scores. I'll
Hmm.
never forget Peter Robinson. The first film score that he did was a Tom Cruise movie called. It's about a bartender. I can't remember the. Do you ever see a movie with Tom Cruise where he plays this bartender? No?
I don't think so.
I'll think of the name.
Okay.
But somebody else might write you and say, oh, here's the name of the movie. And
Hope so.
and after that, Peter Robinson was finding that either he can go on tour with Phil Collins, but there's all these projects coming up, and he's
Right.
getting all this work. So I think he dropped himself out,
Yeah.
and he was great. But I recommended Brad.
Hmm.
Actually, how it worked out that Phil Collins had said to me, he says, Peter's not going to be doing the next tour. Do you have anybody you'd recommend? And I had worked with Gino Vannelli,
Hmm.
because Brad auditioned for Gino Vannelli, and I'm sure he told you that. I
Hmm.
can't remember on the podcast, but
Hmm.
he did, and he got the gig. And so when this came about, I said, well, I know a guy that would really be great for this, and it was Brad Cole.
Hmm.
And another guy like myself, Brad Cole came to the first rehearsal. He could have done the gig.
Hmm.
Okay, is every sound perfect? No, but he got sounds, and I'll never forget. He was doing the rehearsal. We took our first break, and Phil just walked up to me and went, "The guy's great." And I was great
Yeah,
because
because
I
it's your
recommend.
reputation on the line.
I
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
and it's a hard thing to recommend somebody because you
Yeah.
don't know. when Phil was talking to me on the phone, like he would call me. He'd be in his car. Now, at this time, just remember that it was a big deal if you had a phone in your car.
Hmm.
And Phil's in England. He's talking to me, and I'm in Los Angeles.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking, okay. He said, "So what do you think? Is it this guy?" And I said, "Well, I think he can do it." He says, "Yeah, I'm not sure." And and I'm going, "Oh God." And he said, "How sure are you that he can do it?" And I said, "Here's the way I look at it. If I was hiring him, I'm 100% sure. You're hiring him, I'm 99% sure that you'll like him."
Hmm.
That's the way I looked at it.
Hmm.
Because I don't know, maybe there's one thing he doesn't
Hmm.
like about it. So
Yeah.
when he did the rehearsal and then he gave me the thumbs up, I said, "The guy's great." I thought, thank God.
Yeah,
Because
that's amazing.
that's a big deal to fly someone over and audition and then have to send them home, you know?
Oh, that's just stressful situation for everybody, not to mention Brad already being your friend. If you like, hey,
Right.
sorry, I almost got you this huge gig, but they didn't like you. I mean,
Yeah.
that would have sucked too. And also with,
Yeah.
with your credibility with Phil. But um,
Yeah.
do you have, gosh, do you have any notable stories from these Phil Collins experiences? Of course, you have many, but are there maybe a couple that come to mind? Maybe favorite stories on tour or in the studio,
Oh,
just moments that have stuck with you all these years. They could be performance. Could be. I mean, I
wow.
know we've seen some huge Genesis tours, and then
Yeah.
maybe they're doing some of the smaller stuff or the recording sessions, just anything that comes to mind that you
Well,
really,
you know,
really.
it's interesting because I always think about when we did the 2007 Genesis tour, that was going to be the last tour.
Hmm.
Because I remember being on tour with Phil in 1994, 95. We were doing a tour called the Both Sides Tour.
Hmm.
Because he had an album called Both Sides. That was the one album I didn't plan because he did it all himself.
Hmm.
It was kind of like a demo album. It was like he
Hmm.
did demos and then he just ended up putting it out as a record. Um, and I remember Phil saying, he was talking to the manager. This is in 94 on the tour. And he
Hmm.
said, "Oh, Daryl, I'm not going to be doing Genesis anymore." That's how I heard about it. And I went,
Holy
"Oh my
cow.
God, he's not going to do Genesis." Well, I mean, I was still with his band at least, but I thought, damn, I wish I would have known that a long time, a long time
Hmm.
ago, because then I could have, whatever, no one knew that was the
Sure.
tour prior to that was the last one. So when the 2007 tour came about Genesis, I was like, thank God, now we got a chance to do the final tour.
Hmm.
And so when I went on tour with Genesis in 2007, I, when you go on tours from the past, you go, "Oh, that was a great tour. I wish I would have been more present."
Hmm.
Like, think about what a great moment you have here. And so I'm saying this about the 2007 tour. I'm going to savor every day that I'm on tour with this band because this is the last tour.
Hmm.
And I did. And then we did our last show in Europe prior to when we were going to come to the States. And it was this huge 500,000 seat, not seat, 500,000 people in Rome in the
Gosh.
Circus Maximus.
Yep.
And, now there's a DVD about this,
Yep.
and it was going to be a 21 camera shoot. And you have one chance to get it right. I mean, thank God we were already on tour. So we were
Well-oiled machine by that
well
point.
oiled. But I have to tell you, when we're ready to go up, and all of our wives are giving us a hug, like, well, because this is like the last time we're going to be in Europe with
Yeah.
Genesis.
Yeah.
And we're walking up there, and I have to say, and I believe the other guys felt this too, we were a little bit nervous
Hmm.
because it's the last show in Europe. It's a camera shoot. It's going to be on DVD.
Hmm.
And I sense a little bit of stiffness in us at that point
Hmm.
until about the third song or whatever it
Hmm.
was. It was no son of mine. I started feeling like, okay, I'm relaxed now.
Sure.
But it's that kind of thing. There's a lot of stories about different things, but that was a moment that I really thought was one of the great moments that when the band was like, here we're all well oiled, but yet we're going, oh my God, you
Hmm.
know, and I could just feel it. And we got through the show. It was fantastic. But there's always funny things that are going on tours. Like I always think about this moment, like when you drive a car and you're going on a long trip and you're going about 200 miles and you go, I don't even remember the last 50 miles.
Sure.
You think, how did I even get through this?
Hmm.
I think about that with some shows. I'm playing and my brain's cut in half playing the music, and the other half is going like, maybe tonight I'll have a burger. Maybe, no, a club sandwich or a burger. And one time I was on stage and drums and something were playing something. Mike comes to me, he says, because after the shows, they'd have like a floor on the hotel where they'd put out some food for us
Hmm.
after the show.
Hmm.
And it's usually burgers or club sandwich with fries or
Yeah,
chips
sure.
or whatever. And, and Mike comes up to me. I go, yeah, what? He goes, what do you think? Burgers or fries tonight? That's on stage. We're talking about what we're going to have. And I'm sitting there going, oh, okay. Burger probably. So half of me is playing the show and the other half is talking to Mike about
Yeah,
what we're going to have. And that's really true.
yeah,
Every moment isn't like you are intensely
yeah,
involved. You are involved,
yeah,
but you're doing what you do. It's almost on automatic.
yeah.
But the other side is thinking about something else or thinking about, when I get home, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. I don't know. It's pretty fascinating because you can do that
Hmm.
as you can drive 100 miles without even thinking about it
Yeah,
and then go, what just happened? You know?
yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that because it nicely dovetails into a question I was going to ask you just about whether or not at that point in your career, I mean, at 2007, that's well into your career, but even in the 80s and 90s, if you're still getting nervous when you're playing these large shows, but I guess you're sort of habituated to it if it's 50,000 people, but it's the 20th time in the last 2 months you played that, it's probably just feels like another
Yeah.
night, right? Or
Yeah. Well, most of the time, the only time we are nervous is maybe the first couple shows, maybe the first three, and then once you're on tour, you're fine. I
yeah,
don't even get that nervous. I think I was only nervous, or maybe some of us were only nervous because of the situation, the fact that it was going to be recorded. Now, we record every night anyway,
hmm,
but this was going to be specifically for this show, and
yeah,
it's cameras, it's the whole thing, and there is 500,000. Now, I have to say, though, I'm more nervous playing to 50 people than I am playing to 20,000 or 500,000
interesting.
because it's a much more intimate thing.
Like it's so exposed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, another patron of mine named Sam is saying, could you talk about Phil's song Like China? I'm a big fan of Daryl's
Oh,
contribution
wow.
to it. Great riff and unique solo.
Yeah, that I remember doing it, and I actually remember doing that song because we only played it on the first tour.
Hmm.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, because it was on his demo. It was a keyboard ding ding, da 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 da, and I had to come up with the second chord was something different. I remember it's a G with a C bass or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, but I remember doing that. He said to me, I want a guitar solo in this song, but not a typical guitar solo.
Yeah.
So I remember it being a very strange solo.
Hmm.
It's like a lot of tremolo arm,
Yeah.
or vibrato bar, and yeah, I do specifically remember doing that song. I can't tell you much about it other than
Yeah.
he told me don't play a normal solo,
Yeah.
so I didn't. You know,
I'm gonna have to check that out. I don't actually recall the song just by the title.
Yeah, it's probably not a well-known song, but a lot
Yeah.
of people have that album and like
Yeah.
that. There's a couple songs on that album that just never went anywhere else,
Sure.
but I mean, it's on the album. It's a deep cut,
Yeah, for sure.
song. No, it's funny because he's singing it differently too.
Hmm.
He's putting on a much more English accent is not his own.
Sure.
It's more like a northern working class guy singing the
Hmm.
song.
That's cool.
It's on purpose, it's on
Yeah.
purpose.
Yeah. So when you're playing other leads, like, plenty other songs I can think of, obviously, where you've got leads, like Easy Lover is obviously a
Yeah.
sort of a famous one. But when you're in there in the studio, are you writing that solo? Is Phil writing the solo? Are you both writing it? Is Philip Bailey as a producer? Are they just comping takes like happens a lot nowadays? Like, how does that come together?
Yeah, Easy Lover is a good example because now that was for a Philip Bailey album that
Hmm.
Phil was producing, and we had an engineer named George Massenberg, and great engineer, and that solo most of that solo, believe it or not, is my first take, other than other than like the last 2 or 4 bars.
Okay.
But what happens with me is I do the first solo, and maybe I just didn't end it as well as I wanted to, but everything else was fine. Then we do another take. Then we do 4 takes at least.
Hmm.
And then if they want to take parts from a different part, they do. But all they had to do is take the last few bars of another take that I did. I
Right.
think the second take I did.
Yeah.
So, and then George Massenburg said, because you did this a lot back in the 80s,
Yeah.
Daryl, he said, could you double it? And I went, what? Okay. So I said, can you play it back so I can learn it?
So,
So
because when you actually played that take, it was completely improvised or mostly
yeah,
improvised? Oh, okay.
it
All
was,
right. So then you had to learn your own solo.
yeah, it was totally improvised.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so so he said, can you double it? Because we don't want to thicken it up. Okay. So he just play it back so I can learn it. So I had to play it a couple times
Yeah.
and then I learned it. And what's funny about it is while I was doing it, goes, is he on? Because I was doing it right. I
Yeah.
mean, I was,
Right. It was so close. Yeah.
it was so close. He didn't know it was
Yeah.
recording,
That's
and
cool.
which is a real compliment.
Yeah.
And if you hear the song now, you can occasionally hear the other guitar because it's way in the back, just ghosting it a little bit.
Uh,
And because I listened to it several times, I go, now, I mean, recently, like
yeah.
maybe in the last year, I would listen to it because a lot of people have asking me about that solo,
Yeah.
and I can just hear it every once in a while. You can hear another
Yeah.
guitar,
Yeah.
but other than that, it's kind of hard to hear it. So,
Yeah.
you know, it was a lot of fun. That was a great album, a really fun album to do.
Yeah.
We did that in Stockholm. No, we did that at Townhouse Studios, I believe.
Yeah. I'll have
I,
to listen to that solo now again in headphones, paying close
yeah,
attention and see what's going on with it. I wonder if how they panned it too. I imagine they probably didn't put it in the exact same spot. They probably put your
right.
secondary take somewhere else, or
Yeah, and I
who
think
knows.
this the second guitar is quiet, but it's there.
Hmm.
You can definitely hear it.
Yeah,
Anybody with good ears can definitely hear it.
sure. And yeah, one of the things I've always admired about your playing, which shows up in solos, obviously like that one, but I got to really experience firsthand doing performances with you, is that you definitely have the chops and you've done your time as a musician. Like your shit, but it doesn't have a stale feel because you're a musician and you're actually you still play very musically. And that anyway, that's something I've always admired. And a lot of times I think people kind of have one or the other. They can shed and play to a metronome all day long and just play all sorts of scales, but it just sounds like a I don't know, a computer, or it's maybe too
Sure.
intellectual. And then other times maybe somebody is really good at emoting, but when it comes time to, show up with the fireworks, they don't have the goods. And so anyway, you've always struck me as somebody who brings both of those to the table. And that's nothing more than a compliment, but I'm sure anyone who knows your music is also aware of that too.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, I when I do play with Phil, a lot of times the solo I play
Hmm.
is the solo I did on the record. I might embellish, like Easy Lover, for instance. For the first few years, I played the exact solo again.
Hmm.
He never really told me to, but I know that that's what he wanted.
Hmm.
But then I would end it differently.
Hmm.
I remember ending it with a something. Excitement went up to this point, and all of a sudden, then boom, I end it with this
Sure.
big, fast, long line. And
Yeah.
I didn't do that on the record.
Yeah.
But he never told me not to do that. It's
Yeah.
like one of those things that, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I will imitate, like when I do Genesis, I'll do Firth the Fifth, my version of Firth the Fifth.
Hmm.
I put in a lot of what Steve played, and then I do some other things.
Sure.
And I did that solo almost the same way every night, except for with a couple little embellishments. And but it never felt stale to me to do that again.
Hmm.
Just as when you're doing a Genesis show, you're basically playing the show the same way every night.
Hmm.
I never get, I'm just one of the musicians that doesn't get bored,
Hmm.
because there's something about, especially in live performance,
Hmm.
there's the audience, there's the band, there's the excitement, and even if you're playing the same notes, it feels different every night to me,
Yeah.
even if it's the
Yeah.
same. You know how it is, and
Totally.
and I mean, doing a solo on. on a fill record, if I get a chance to do a solo, and I'm grateful
Hmm.
because that's when I was with Jean-Luc Ponty, like I probably had a solo on almost every song. And so even when I was going to go into Genesis, I thought, I wonder if this will be as interesting. It's
Yeah,
way more interesting than I
totally.
expect.
Yeah.
And it's when you're talking about like guitar players, like some of my so, sometimes I'm listening to a solo album by a certain guitar player, and I'm thinking this guy's such a great player, but the music doesn't interest me.
Sure.
Like a lot of time, the playing is like a riff, and all of a sudden there's solo galore,
Hmm.
and every note in the book is playing, and I'm admiring them as a technician. I'm
Yeah.
thinking, oh, I can't do that. I wish I could do
Yeah.
that. But at the same time, I at least think when I do an album, I think about the music first,
Yeah.
and then if it has a solo, it has a solo.
Yeah.
But and I can technically do some cool things and
Oh,
some,
totally.
but you build to that. You don't start that way.
Sure.
And there's today when I watch YouTube clips of players, there's some like new young I'll call them kids
Yeah.
that I think, man, it blows me away. Their technique is unbelievable. I even watched. I had to be a judge at a Lee Ritenour, the guitar player, had asked me
Hmm.
if I'd be a judge, and you'd listen to all these tapes by different guys. They'd have video. There'd be like a 16-year-old that was just like blow me away as a technician.
Hmm.
And then he'd have to also show a person of himself playing with a band.
Hmm.
And it wasn't as impressive because in his bedroom, the guy was just like unbelievable. But
Hmm.
on stage, it was like, eh, it didn't do the job.
Yeah.
Some of the great guitar players out there um, aren't necessarily technically the fastest,
Yeah.
but they're the most interesting to me. And
Yeah.
that's just my opinion. But there's a
Agreed.
lot of guys out there that I think that are amazing players, but I listen to they all maybe once and that's
Yeah.
it.
And that extends to a piano player, a singer, or any musician, right? Because it's
Yeah,
like there's a certain musical maturity and authenticity that is necessary, and you only get that, I think, through age and performance. You're probably not going to have that when you're 16, even if you can play a million scales at
right.
100 million miles an hour.
Yeah, and like an example of a guy that I think is just great, does all the right things, and that has amazing technique, but also has the most is a guy Steve Lukather from Toto.
Hmm. Yeah,
That
he's
guy,
just amazing.
yeah, everything he plays to me is great.
Yeah.
And it's tasteful, and yet he plays some things you go, oh wow, okay, like a line that just blows you away.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it's not like the first line you hear. He works to that point.
Yeah.
That's the way I feel about playing. I mean, I'm okay technically, but there's a lot of guys that are better than me on the technical level. So,
Yeah.
but I'm happy where I'm
Well,
at,
for what
sort
it's
of.
worth, I haven't seen that many of them, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, no.
So tell me a little bit about your solo stuff too. How did you balance that with working with Phil Collins?
Well, that's easy because we didn't really you don't tour every year.
Okay.
You always got a lot of time off, and
Hmm.
as you know, I work with Coastia. I also have a band that I play.
Hmm.
Um, and the hardest part about everything is that today there's not the gigs there used to be. And
Hmm.
maybe I'm not happy to be older, but
Hmm.
I grew up in an era where you could play in a club 5 nights a week
Right.
and make a living doing it. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said before, I never had another job.
Yeah.
I was able to do it, and then I fortunate enough to get an audition with these bands, Ponty and Gino Vannelli and
Hmm.
Genesis,
Yeah.
and sometimes I kind of look at that and I think to myself, like, it was a good era for me. I grew up
Totally.
in an era where there was reel-to-reel tape. Now you got Pro Tools and digital, and that's great too. Um, the sad part about it is we don't get a chance to be amongst uh, when you're recording, you're rarely in the same room with the person,
Yeah.
like at least as a band.
Yeah.
And I kind of miss that era
Yeah.
where we go in there and we play live in the
Yeah.
studio.
Yeah.
And warts and all, as they
Yeah, for
say,
sure. Yeah.
and you at least you could go back and if you
Yeah.
did a line wrong, you could at least punch it in.
Yeah.
But editing now is so much better, so
Yeah.
easy to edit.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. So we got the tools, but some of the heart is not in the music for
Yeah.
me. It's almost so technically
Yeah.
sterile, a
Yeah.
lot of things that I
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I would say it's a double-edged sword. Almost
Yeah.
exactly just what you said. The technology is hard to deny its usefulness, and
Mm,
I mean, it's actually just magic what you can do. But at
yeah.
the same time, yeah, when you're actually co-writing or you're working on songs together, or you're shedding parts and you're trying to create arrangements with other people, you're not in a vacuum doing it by yourself. So when you play
Right.
a certain line on the guitar or the piano or sing something, maybe it sparks an idea in somebody else, and all of a sudden there's this collaborative thing. And I totally agree. On the one hand, it's great. I can send Daryl Stuermer a track and say, "Hey, can you put down some guitar on this?" But at the same time, it's just not the same. So
Yeah. It would have been nice to be in the same room. Now,
yeah,
although it might turn out fine,
yeah,
I mean, I'm
yeah,
not denying that some great things are done this way.
yeah,
It's more about the community of it, like
yeah,
amongst the intimacy with other musicians.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I love that. I
yeah,
miss
yeah,
because we can do it without it.
yeah,
Sometimes it
absolutely.
turns out. But I also notice that, like, when I'm watching certain television shows, like say Jimmy Fallon or Saturday
Hmm.
Night
Hmm.
Live, um, a lot of the bands that I see,
Hmm.
you're separating the boys from the men.
Hmm.
This band is great.
Hmm.
And then you hear another band that maybe sounded great on record. They're not great live.
Sure.
They're not that great of players because they
Yeah,
don't have to be.
yeah,
And in my opinion, when I'm watching some of these shows, the best live bands are you with excellent singing, excellent playing, are country bands.
yeah.
And country isn't even my music. But
Hmm.
I look at that and I go, these guys are playing live. There's nothing on recording. There's nothing else playing. They're playing great. They're playing exactly, and the guys can sing.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah,
And I see a lot of the pop groups, and there's not a lot. Sometimes there's some pretty lousy singers
yeah.
live.
Absolutely.
And they sound great on recording, but that's because
Yeah,
they have auto tune. And
yeah,
if I hear auto tune anymore, it's just going to drive me crazy.
yeah,
And then there's all different styles of music. There's rap music
yeah,
but when I'm talking about just music and not
yeah,
rap,
yeah,
it just kind of blows me away of how mediocre some of the
yeah,
players are and some of
yeah,
the singers are. And then the country guys get up there and go, they're great every
yeah,
time.
yeah,
I mean, I'd say 99% of the time
yeah,
they're pretty,
yeah.
really pretty good.
Well, my take on that is that, again, country music is definitely not my wheelhouse either. I actually recently did a gig with a kind of up and coming country guy here from Nevada, but
Yeah.
awesome band too, an awesome singer. And I think part of it is there's still some it's maybe a little bit by nature more organic. They're playing real instruments. There's not as many like maybe backing tracks or computerized things. And by the way, I don't have any problem with any of that. I think used creatively, it's all amazing. But
Absolutely.
but if you are actually playing and there's four guys and that's just what you're doing and there's a real singer, you can't really hide behind anything. And with
Right.
modern pop music production, whether it's auto-tune or any sort of edits or computerized things, you can essentially create a track that has it can be a beautiful track, can be a very effective track in a studio environment, but it has nothing to do with live performance. And
Right.
country artists, it's just not really like that. So they're pretty much recording more like they play live, and you show up and you either kind of have the goods or you don't. Same with
Mhm.
singer-songwriters, kind of, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I hear it all the time. I can hear something and go, wow, that's great. And then you see it live, you go, "Pff, wow.
Yeah,
It's amazing that that's not anywhere
yeah,
near how good the recording was.
yeah. So
But
if you,
also, oh, I'm
so go
sorry.
go ahead, Daryl. Yeah,
Also, the other thing I look at this era of
yeah.
music, which maybe it'll change, but I'll go to a restaurant here in Milwaukee or someplace, and there's a band in there playing very quietly.
Hmm.
And some of these players are really good players. Like, for instance, like Kostia.
Yeah,
He's my keyboard player. He's your
yeah,
keyboard
yeah,
player.
yeah.
He's just one of the great piano player. And I'm sitting there thinking he's playing in a restaurant where people are going, make sure you keep the volume down.
It's
And,
ridiculous. Yeah,
and you just go, oh my God. I see a lot of players in
yeah,
Milwaukee that are really good musicians,
yeah,
and they're just wallpaper.
yeah. Exactly.
And that's
Wallpaper.
not the way it was when I was here. Well,
Hmm.
I'm still here now. But when I was playing locally,
Yeah,
we were playing nightclubs, we were playing
yeah,
festivals. and that's the sad part of it is.
Hmm.
But there's also a good part that it's sometimes now the way people make money aren't so much on the records, which
Hmm.
is too bad,
Hmm.
but they make it by playing live. So at least they're playing live, and I
Yeah.
like live
Yeah.
playing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not just about the record. In
Yeah.
the older days, you could make money just playing on the record. Just the
Yeah.
albums that would sell. Nothing is selling like it used to
Yeah.
sell.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and streaming rates are, I mean, criminally low, I would say.
Yeah,
It's just not the same as FM radio.
right.
Which actually reminds me, I see two plaques behind you, and they're record
About
plaques. I wonder if you could tell us what either of those are. They look like I can see Phil Collins up there. Are those specific records, or what are those? And then there's a Genesis one behind the computer monitor.
all right. The big Genesis one is a combination of records. There's an album on each. If this wasn't here, you could see it.
Yeah.
The one over there. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, like there's a Phil Collins one over here.
Yep.
That's from the But Seriously album, which was 1989, and that went platinum several times. A lot of these they're all over my room.
Yeah.
A lot of the Phil Collins ones are like platinum in England is different than platinum in the States. Like platinum is 1 million here, but
Sure.
in England it might be 100,000
Yeah.
because of the population, and that's the way a
Sure.
lot of these are. Yeah,
So
I mean,
which album was Something Happened on the Way to Heaven? Which, by the way, you were a co-writer and you had another solo on that. Which
yeah,
album was that?
that was the But Seriously album.
Okay.
Now, I gotta clear that part up. Now, I am a co-writer of that song, and I played guitar on it, but the solo is not me. Because what was going to happen is originally he was thinking it might be a sax solo.
Oh,
And I don't know if he tried it, but then Dominique Miller was in town, and he knew the engineer, and he actually came and did the guitar solo on Something Happened on the Way to Heaven. Now live, of course, I do it, but
yeah, yeah.
so that's Dominique Miller from Sting Band.
That's
Uh,
so interesting just because obviously you played solos on the other songs,
yeah,
but you were a co-writer on that one. And obviously when we've played live or when I've seen you play live with Phil,
yeah,
only on YouTube, I got to see the one Genesis show, which I'm very
right.
grateful to have seen, but you're playing that solo there. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and but I'm on the record. I'm da 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 da
Right, right,
da
right.
da 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 and all that, and all the chords and stuff. So I'm playing all these guitar parts except for the solo,
Yeah.
and because it was originally not going to be guitar.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And same thing with Another Day in Paradise is Dominique on nylon string guitar,
Mm, mm.
and I think those are I think that he played on those two songs. And I know Dominique Miller. In fact, we just recently emailed each other.
Nice.
Really, I don't know if you know this. Dominique, a long time he lived in Racine, Wisconsin.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think the story is that his father was military and they moved around a lot of different
Mm,
places. But
mm,
there's a place in Racine, Wisconsin, which is not far from Milwaukee. He
hmm.
actually, if you even look at his Wikipedia, it says that as well.
Oh, nice.
But he's I think he's British. I'm not sure if he's South African or British. I can't remember. But anyway, he's a great player too. I mean, he's
Yeah.
just another really tasteful player. He's not so much like a solo guy,
Hmm.
but all of his parts are just like
Hmm.
really inventive and
Yeah.
creative.
Well, if he was playing with Sting, I know that
Yeah,
you think Sting is awesome too, because I know you
I
play some
do.
of his music, but he's one of my absolute favorites too. Just a combination of like an incredible artist, a unique sound, um, technically excellent, but also just super expressive and multi-dimensional. I mean, gosh, Sting, yeah,
Well,
he's
another guy
incredible.
that went from a band like Genesis, Police,
Hmm.
did well
Yeah,
on
that's
his
true.
own as a
English
solo.
guy. Yeah.
Yeah, another
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
I know he's amazing. I love his. I mean, for me, like the British guys of my era, I'm a real big Peter Gabriel fan. I'm a
Hmm.
big Sting fan. I would
Yeah.
be a Phil Collins fan if I'm still am, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in his music and doing his
Yeah.
music. There's a lot of guys like that. I just think are kind of exceptional.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you've been super awesome with your time. I appreciate it. There's just a couple more questions, and one,
Sure.
I guess, is what have you had any contact with Phil recently? Like, I understand the 2021 Genesis tour was the last tour, but it's Any chance Phil will ever be doing anything musically again, or what is he up to these days?
Yeah, actually, 2022 was our last. I'll never forget it because that was the COVID tour,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, from 21 and 22. And I remember it was a tough tour because first of all, I was surprised we were going on the tour again. Remember the
Hmm.
last tour was supposed to be 2007, and then
Yeah.
then we did Phil's tour in 17, 18, and 19,
Hmm.
and then we did Genesis in 2000. We were supposed to start in 2000, and that's when all of a sudden COVID hit.
Yeah.
And because I'll never forget having to go over to England and being quarantined for like 14 days.
I remember having an email exchange with you during that
Yeah,
point, and you wrote me, and you're like, "I'm locked in the hotel in England." Holy
I
cow!
know. It was amazing. I mean, I remember because the tour manager brought over a guitar and a bass so I could practice, and you essentially were supposed to stay in your room the whole time. It was a
Mhm.
beautiful hotel. It was the Mandarin Oriental uh, hotel, which is Hyde Park's right in the back, and you're looking out the window going, "Oh." Anyway, so but when we started rehearsing, we had to have our masks, and
Yeah.
we had to get they did the cotton swab, one up your nose.
Yeah.
Well, we had to do it down our throat and our nose.
Ah.
In England, it was the worst thing. Every 3 days we got tested for COVID. And first you go down your throat and you're just gagging the whole time.
Hmm.
And then you do it up your nose, which hurts.
Yeah.
So the other thing is a gag and the other one hurts.
Oh, geez.
So we had a doctor on the road for the whole tour and we had all these protocols. The only time we didn't wear a mask was on stage,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And so I got through the whole tour without getting COVID, except the last 3 days, which was the last three shows in London. So we were going to play London Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then go home on Sunday. On
Mhm.
Wednesday, I got tested and I had COVID.
Oh,
I'll
geez.
never, I'll never forget this. And I went, I can't believe I was the only one that kind of got away with not getting COVID for
Hmm.
some reason. And then I got it. So then Sunday comes, I'm supposed to go home, but I can't. So I had to stay an extra week. So you had to have like 10 days, like Wednesday through
Yeah.
whatever, and stay in England because they wouldn't allow you back in the States.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I don't know how I got on that, but that was the final tour. But there was a question, I
Oh, I
think,
was
what I
just asking if Phil's up to anything now. I mean, I
oh,
know that that was the last tour officially, but
right, right. Well, I don't think so because well, I mean, I can't say never, never, but because he really would have to sit again for the whole like he did on his tours.
hmm.
He sat for his tour, and then he sat for he still pulled it off, which
Hmm.
is really amazing. As soon as he goes out there, all of a sudden the audience is all with you, and that kind of helps him get back
Sure.
into the game. I don't have any information whether we're going to do anything more. I don't think so. I don't think physically he's up for it and or mentally up for it, but I don't know if he's going to do some songwriting though. I think that's something he's thinking about doing.
Okay.
Drumming is that's the one thing I just wish he could play
Yeah.
because, but luckily enough, we did the Phil Collins tour in 2017 and on, and then Genesis
Hmm.
with Nick, his son, and
Yeah.
his son was the closest thing to him
Yeah.
to having Phil.
Yeah.
And this kid just did a great job. I
Yeah.
can't believe when we started rehearsing, he was 17,
Yeah. That's
you
wild.
know, and then when we were on the Phil Collins, I mean, on the Genesis tour, he turned 21.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking how in that, in a period of 1 year, he's playing with veteran players,
Hmm.
people have been doing, he's learning what some people would take 15 years to learn.
Sure.
He's playing along with like Leland Sklar in bass. I mean, that's a great bass player to have if you're going to be locking in with a bass player.
Yeah.
Uh, it's one of those things you think that would have taken a lot longer. What he
Yeah.
did in 1 year, someone else would take 5, 6
Yeah.
years to
Yeah.
learn.
Yeah.
And he matured in that time.
Yeah.
And when he did Genesis, I think that was the best part because he did that better than playing with Phil Collins band because I think the Genesis music is more where he lives in a
Sure.
sense, and
Sure.
his musically lives, and he's a very progressive player.
Yeah.
He's technically wonderful, but he's got a great feel too.
Hmm.
So, and on top of that, he's really a great kid.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I've known him basically since he was 4 years old.
Yeah.
I remember when he was born, and then I remember him backstage with a little drum kit, and he was playing Something Happened on the Way to Heaven. Because it started out with this drums and percussion
Yeah.
thing, and he was playing those parts. Dun 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 dun. And I'm going, wow, this kid maybe he's going to be a drummer, not knowing that he's going to be the drummer for Phil Collins and Genesis.
Yeah.
Obviously, he got in there because of that, but he can also do the job.
Yeah.
You know, a
Yeah.
lot of people think, well, he's Phil Collins' son. That's why.
Yeah.
Well, he did get he had to
Yeah.
basically audition. He had to rehearse
Yeah.
with us before we were actually rehearsing
Yeah.
and find out that he could do it. He could do it.
Yeah. I mean, I saw the show. He was incredible. No doubt
Yeah.
about it. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was in a sense the perfect fit.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
it was like Phil becoming the singer of Genesis, Nick becoming the drummer of
yeah.
Genesis.
This is a nice, you know, symbolic passing of the torch too, honestly. It
Right.
was really cool.
I mean, obviously Chester was great with
Yeah.
Genesis all these years. I think this was like Phil would probably only go on tour if Nick could be the drummer at that
Yeah.
point. You know,
Yeah.
nothing against Chester.
For
It
sure.
was just a matter of, like you're saying, it's like passing the torch. It's almost kind of like it kind of came about organically, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, one more question from one of my patrons, and so this is a guy named Chris. First of all, he says he wants to express his condolences for the loss of Michaela earlier this year. He's curious if you might be willing to share any particular memories of her in her honor, and also he's actually just wondering about your own situation. It's recently been revealed that
Oh,
you're
right.
dealing with
Yeah.
Parkinson's, and he's just wishing you the best and kind of wondering,
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
how you're doing
Well,
with that.
with Parkinson's, it's like one of those things that um, I could still play guitar, but there's definitely some things that I can't play. Like in my band, I have certain songs,
Hmm.
and I go, okay, I can't play this one. I can play this one. I could still play live, um, but like Easy Lover, there's this fast line in Easy
Hmm.
Lover. I've tried it. I just can't do it because what it is I've lost control with this hand. It's called an essential tremor. There's
Hmm.
Parkinson's, and then there's an essential tremor,
Hmm.
and that's my picking hand.
Hmm.
And I find that very difficult. I was having difficult on the Genesis tour in 2021 and 22,
Hmm.
just to play ding 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 ding, which is turn it on again.
Sure.
And I was going, why am I having trouble with this? I never had trouble. It's being steady. And after the tour, that's when I got diagnosed, and
Sure.
it sort of made sense to me.
Hmm.
Not that I wanted that diagnosis,
Hmm.
but it made sense to me that this is why I couldn't do certain things.
Hmm.
Like there's a fast line in when I would play live, Something Happened on Way to Heaven, and there's a fast line I do in Firth of Fifth, like
Yeah. Hmm.
I can't do that anymore. I can play all the other stuff, but I can't
Hmm.
play that line.
Hmm.
Um, so, it's just it's something I got to live with.
Yeah.
I feel more fortunate than, say, Phil Collins can't play drums.
Hmm.
At least I can still play the guitar,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But
Well, I mean, I saw you play in June, and I thought it was
all
fantastic
right.
as ever for whatever that's worth. So.
Well, at that point, I hadn't played live for 2 years, but
Hmm.
the band hadn't played together for like
Hmm.
since 2017.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was kind of playing that when I played live at that. I I said to myself after I played, I said, "Well, I think I can do this." You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I I was able to pull that off. So
Yeah.
now I have to just focus, and I'm gonna even be getting together with Kostya. I think it's next week.
That
Um,
makes me so happy. I wasn't going to ask, but
mhm.
I was wondering. I'm so glad that you guys are going to get together.
Yeah, we're gonna get together, and I just want to see where I'm at,
Sure.
like playing wise. I want to see what I can do, what I can't. I think, when I play in my room here, I can do certain things, but you know how it is when you get live, that's another ball game.
Yeah.
That's Things sometimes some things are easier, some things are harder when you
Yeah.
play live.
Yeah.
because there's an energy that really pushes you to play.
Yeah.
But there's also the energy that makes you go, yikes. Like I used to always joke with another guitar player that he says, every once in a while when I get on stage and I'm a little nervous, all of a sudden arthritis sets in. Like you can't play it. It's awesome.
Sure.
Why is this so hard to play?
Yeah.
And that's even when I played at that event that we're talking about,
Hmm.
I was shaking a little bit because not only I was a little nervous about it because I hadn't played in a couple of years
Hmm.
live. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? So anyway, but that's yeah. As far as my wife, I would rather not talk
Sure.
about that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no problem. So, just wrapping up here, is there anything else you've had an amazing career for so many years, um, so many cool accolades, performances, recordings. Is there anything that you've never really been asked that you, I guess, always kind of either wondered why it hadn't come up, or something that maybe people might be curious about that is just, it never come up in any of these interviews?
Um, a lot of times it's more about the Jean-Luc Ponty era,
Yeah.
probably because it's not as popular of an
Yeah,
era.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, but one of the fun things for me was I was Jean-Luc Ponty. We were going to be on the Tonight Show with the Johnny Carson Tonight Show
Hmm.
era. This would have been 1970, 76, I believe. Yeah,
Hmm.
76.
Hmm.
And I remember we're standing there, and it was a guest host. Johnny Carson wasn't there, which I was kind of disappointed. But it was George Carlin was there.
Oh, wow.
He was the
God,
host.
that guy was funny.
Yeah, he was great. And but Doc Severinsen was the band leader. I don't know if this
I've heard
is
of him. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, Doc Severinsen, and he was he's a great trumpet player, by the way.
Hmm.
He's still I believe he's still alive. Um, he's got to be like 90 something. Well, anyway, he walks up to me and he says, "Are you the guitar player that played on New Country?" There's a song called New Country by Jean-Luc Ponty,
Hmm.
and it's acoustic guitar. And he says, I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, wow, great playing. And what guitar were you playing?" It was an Ovation acoustic. And to have Doc Severinsen, remember that's my era. I'm
Hmm.
watching Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Say that was like, oh my God, and I mean, I have to say there's a line in there that comes up. It's the fastest line on the guitar, and I don't even know how I could play that. But
Hmm.
I probably could play it because I was 23 years old.
Sure.
Because you have no fear. You think I can do whatever,
Sure.
and it's and even like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I couldn't play that line.
Okay.
I mean, and when I didn't have Parkinson's,
Sure. Sure.
it's like, oh my God, how could I play that line?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple players I know could play it today, like Al
Yeah.
Di Miller could play
Yeah.
it. Do you know who Matteo Mancuso is?
It sounds
Uh, he's a
familiar.
Brit. He's the new kid on the block. I
Okay.
mean, this guitar player is like miles beyond anybody else. He plays electric guitar with his fingers like a classical,
Okay.
and he can play things that I don't think some guitar players can play. I mean, I know I can't,
Yeah.
but he plays things that are like you have to look this guy up,
Right.
Matteo Mancuso. I think
Matteo
that's
Metcuso.
Mancuso,
Yeah.
and look him up because I've been following him for like years, and he's probably I don't know if he's 28 or maybe 30 now.
Hmm.
It's just like you just listen to it and go, okay, I give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's that good. I mean, he's
Yeah.
that good. There's he could play that line
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
he could play things that other guys that play with a pick cannot play because there's no way to do it
Sure.
because he's got all his fingers. Um, and we had done the Tonight Show. Finally, the third time I was on the Tonight Show, which was with Phil,
Hmm.
and if you want to look it up on YouTube, it's fun. It's 1985, and
Hmm.
finally Johnny Carson. Because the time I was after the George Carlin thing, the next time I played on there was with Phil, but it
Hmm.
was Jay Leno was the guest host. He wasn't the host.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, and that was great. It was great to
Yeah.
meet. He's such a nice guy.
Hmm.
But then finally in 1985, me and Phil are going to do the Tonight Show. And I never forget this because we had just done like 10 shows in a row or something like that. And we were in Colorado, him and I flew to Los Angeles. We had a night off. Here's
Mhm.
his night off. His voice is already really worked,
Mhm.
for playing every night. And we go on the Tonight Show, and it's just me on a nylon string guitar, Phil on piano and singing. I think the first song was it might be I think it's Against All Odds.
Yeah.
And and when he gets done, Phil walks over there and sits down. And when Johnny Carson announced us, he said, "Here he is, Phil Collins and Daryl Stuermer." He said, "Okay." So I think that's how he says Stuermer. And but the people were applauding loud at that point when they said Phil Collins. And then when Phil sits down after we played the song, and I'm still sitting over there, and he says, Phil, you got such a loud response that they didn't hear the guitar player's name, Daryl Stuermer. And I went, holy shit. I was so like, oh my God. But I remember
That was
Johnny
really
used to,
nice of him.
it was great of him. And that was night. And at that time, the show was an hour and a half. So we got to play a second song.
Yeah.
Nobody does two songs on there
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
So we did, I mean, we've done it with Jimmy Fallon. I think it was 2016 before the Phil Collins tour.
Yeah, with Questlove on drums,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it was me
Yeah.
and Brad and the Roots guys and Phil. And this was before there was even a tour talked about. What
Yeah.
Phil was doing was promoting his book called Not Dead Yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and that was fun.
Yeah.
But that was the Jimmy Fallon show. That was the only time I've done that show.
Yeah.
And guitar player, really nice guy. He was fantastic, and he did like a second guitar part
Mhm.
because I did two guitars
Sure.
in there tonight, and he did the other part.
Yeah.
They're really nice guys, just great
Yeah.
guys to be around.
Yeah.
Good vibe all the way around.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I've actually obviously I saw the Jimmy Fallon
Yeah.
performance, when it came out, but I've also seen the Johnny Carson one where you're
Oh, you
playing
did?
acoustic guitar. Yeah, and I think stuff like that's really cool too, because most of the presentation of Phil Collins is in this huge pop rock stadium worthy sort of production, which is super cool and really exciting. But I
Yeah.
think it kind of showed another dimension to what Phil does and what you both do in that sort of acoustic setting. It's sort of, especially once people know the song, kind of breaks it down and gives everyone a chance to reinterpret it. I loved watching that episode.
Yeah, and like I said, his voice was raw. I mean, he even said to me, "Well, gotta play, gotta do Against All Odds." And there's this high note coming back to me. It's like one of these kind of falsetto things. When he would do it live, he wouldn't
That
do
one.
falsetto.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he would
But
he would do that uh, for that show. He
yeah,
had to do it because he couldn't hit that note.
sure.
But,
Yeah.
and I think he mentions that we just played 9 shows in a row
Yeah.
with no break.
Yeah.
And years later, we would do 3 shows and then have a day off or
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
travel day off and then 3 shows.
Yeah.
They would always try not to do more than
Yeah.
2 or 3.
Hmm.
Because you know how that is with the
Oh
voice.
yeah. It
It's a delicate thing.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, you absolutely, there's a point where you can't do it anymore. But I mean,
Yeah.
at least back then, Phil actually was singing. Nowadays they would have just done something to tracks and have everybody was faking it and pulled a fast one. But so
Yeah. Well, it always bothered me when Saturday Night Live would have a band on and there's not too much live going on.
yeah.
You hear all these voices and machines and
Yeah.
two guys up there playing. What?
What the hell? Yeah. Saturday night overdubbed, they should have
Yeah.
called it. But
Yeah. Yeah. Saturday Night Mimed.
yeah, yeah, right. Well, Daryl, thank you so much for coming on the show and doing this. Really appreciate it. Is there anything else at the end you want people to know about? And where can people find you online, or social media, or Daryl Stuermer
Yeah.
website?
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you've seen this. I did an interview recently for a guy named Mason Marangella, and there's where I'm actually playing some of the
Yep, I
songs.
saw it. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I shared
Yeah.
it online. Yep.
Oh, yeah, great. I mean, that's something that I was kind of proud of.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the first time I revealed having Parkinson's too. And I
Yeah.
thought, but Mason was great. He came here. I wish we could have done it face
Yeah.
to face,
Yeah.
but he was able to fly to Milwaukee, and we just did it in my studio here.
Yeah.
And but I'm not doing a lot right now, but I want to. I
Yeah.
think if I get together with Costi and
Yeah.
kind of work out where my strengths are, I think
Yeah.
start playing again, and hopefully maybe you'll be able to do some singing with us too.
I was just gonna say, you know where to find a good singer. Please,
Yeah,
please let
yeah,
me know.
um, yeah. I mean, it's funny how the world is smaller now, so even Reno doesn't seem that far away
Yeah,
anymore.
no,
And
yeah,
I just came from California, and I
yeah,
was remember because of the government shutdown,
yeah,
I was very worried I wasn't going to get home.
yeah, yeah.
And I remember, but I went to I did the smart thing, and I went out there and went out there to the Burbank airport,
Mm-hmm,
which is much less chaotic than LAX.
mm-hmm,
So when I got to Burbank, I went from my hotel to Burbank to come home, and the plane was going to Las Vegas for a layover,
mm-hmm,
perfectly on time, right on time. I
mm-hmm,
couldn't believe it.
mm-hmm.
And then there was only a 30-minute delay leaving to get back to Milwaukee. So I was really grateful to
Mm-hmm.
really get back here. I think it's all going to kind of loosen up now because the
Yeah,
government open up. But
yeah,
yeah. So, but yeah, I'm going to have to get myself together and try to get some, try to get some gigs together and see where I'm at. I think I want to
yeah,
start low key first,
yeah,
just do some low key things and then
mm-hmm,
see how that goes.
yeah,
I was even thinking of maybe doing a fundraiser for Parkinson's, since I'm to also show that everything doesn't stop.
yeah, for sure.
You know, it could be a good message too. I
Yeah,
mean, obviously, maybe I don't have it as bad as some other people.
yeah,
Everybody's different,
yeah,
but right now I don't have any problems with balance or things like
yeah,
that. My main problem is
yeah,
this picking hand. But I'm grateful that I'm still healthy enough to get through it.
sure. Yeah. Well, needless to say, I'm obviously, wishing you the very best with that.
Hey, yeah.
But yeah, in any case, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Please say hello to Fiona for me.
I
And
will.
yeah, until next time, thanks, Daryl. We'll
All
talk
right.
soon.
No, thank you. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conversations for Convergence. If you'd like to support the show or any of my musical endeavors, the best way is by joining my Patreon at patreon.com/Eric Henry Andersen. And of course, sharing the episodes with friends and family and rating and reviewing the show wherever you listen to podcasts helps immensely. For all other things Eric Henry Andersen, be sure to sign up for my mailing list at erichenryandersen.com. That's Andersen ending in S-E-N. You can also follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Eric Henry Andersen, and on X at E, H, Andersen Music. Thanks for listening.